Good afternoon and a very warm welcome. My name is Jamie McGeechan. I'm the Events and Sponsorship Coordinator here at VOYCE. We'll just wait a little second until our attendees filter in. So yes, a warm welcome to this Community Education Series webinar from VOYCE on Tuesday, August the 23rd. Today, our topic is the dilemma of ageing and long-term care. We all want the best for our loved ones, but knowing how to deal with issues that can arise in long-term care can often be a confusing experience. Today's session is presented by Chien, Programme Director of VOYCE, and Kayla Peniston, our Ombudsman. Chien will be joined today by family member Mary to discuss some of the issues she experienced when her family member was living in a long-term care facility. We'll explore how to deal with the issues, sharing practical advice and information. And now I'd like to introduce our guests.
So we are going to talk about the challenges of aging and long-term care today. So with me today, that is our Ombudsman Kayla Peniston on the far right here. And Kayla oversees Central County and the West County in St. Louis County, and then in the middle here on our sofa, that is Mary. And Mary, first of all, wants to share the stories about her family and her dear sister.
Yes, thank you, Chien. I'm happy that you invited me, and I'm grateful that you've helped me. Especially the Ombudsman program. And I jotted down a few details from my experience that you might find helpful should you be in this situation. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my family. I come from a large family, 8 children, 7 girls and 1 boy. My maternal grandmother, my mother, and my older sister all died from Alzheimer's. My sister had early onset at 54, died at 64. And now my younger sister has dementia, and her situation is entirely different. She's single, always lived alone, a retired high school teacher, and has no children. She's beloved by her family, of course, but by millions of friends, former students, and I'm her power of attorney. My sister just turned 70 a couple of weeks ago, and the memory situation has been going on for several years. We've tried to speak with her about it, and to no avail. She would get angry, walk away, and continued to just be in denial. But then it hit me pretty hard when, for the first time, someone outside the family approached me, thank you, and stopped me. I was coming out from a funeral, and in the parking lot a couple approached me and asked if I had noticed anything about my sister, and they then proceeded to tell me about their observations and their experience with her memory loss. So I listened, and it was sort of a wake-up call, because while I knew it, now I'm hearing it from someone else, and I knew that something had to be done soon. So again, not talking to my sister effectively, I called her doctor, and I asked if she could provide some medication so my sister wouldn't be so agitated all the time. And of course, the answer was no, because my sister was self-medicating, and she wouldn't allow us to give her medications. The more defiant my sister became, the more I would talk to her doctor. And finally, she referred my sister to a neuropsychologist. My sister did not want to go to the appointment, but that happened, and she took a battery of tests. She was evaluated, and when the results came back in a week, my sister didn't want to hear them. She refused to go to the appointment, so the doctor was kind enough to agree to go over the results on the phone. My sister's private and independent, as I said. So when this happened and we were in the room with her, she was very upset. And the doctor called and she said, "You have 5 minutes." So the doctor calmly proceeded, understanding my sister's illness. And the two things that we feared the most came up pretty quickly. That my sister should not live alone, and she could not drive. My sister practically lives in her car. I should say past tense, lived in her car. And this was traumatic. And she said, that's not going to happen. She said to the doctor, how many accidents have you had? I haven't had any. And then she said, how many tickets have you had? I haven't had any. And she badgered the doctor. And finally, the doctor gave in and said, okay, you can take a road test, and if you pass, you keep your license. Otherwise, no more driving. Unfortunately, there was a glitch in the paperwork system, and somehow the state got notified and revoked my sister's license before she had the opportunity to take a road test. Not that she would have passed, but that was awful for my sister to not have a chance. I told her that we would be happy to give her rides. Her friends would be happy to give her rides. We weren't going to abandon her. But really, this alienated her more from me than ever. I took groceries to her house because she couldn't shop anymore. I took meals over, and things worsened. And at one point, she didn't want me in her house, so I would leave the food and the groceries on her porch, not knowing if she ate them, what she did with them. Then it got to the point where she didn't want any family member to be near her. And when she saw our car approaching, she would quickly run out the front door and go to her neighbor's house, who were also her friends. Now I was becoming concerned about her safety more than anything because she lived alone. I decided that I needed to start looking for home care. I wanted her to stay at home. That was my goal. And so I focused on calling agencies. I did my own research. And I was fortunate enough to find two people who were quite capable of taking care of my sister. One was a retired nurse, and she made 2 attempts to see my sister, and my sister wouldn't let her in the house. She said, this is my domain, and no one's entering it. The second person was a nun who had wonderful experience, and I thought her personality would be perfect for my sister. Same thing happened. My sister wouldn't let her in the house. So as a last resort, I hired a care management company, but the same thing happened with the person that they sent out, who I had interviewed and thought would be a good fit. Finally, I decided the other option would be to ask my sister's best friend, she's known her since kindergarten, if she would talk to my sister, either by herself, with me, or with another friend. And she refused based on the fact that she didn't want the relationship to be hampered, and I agreed, and I respected that. So we ended that conversation, and then shortly thereafter, her friend stopped talking to me. She didn't think I was working quickly enough. She didn't think I was going in the right direction to help my sister. A couple months went by, and I, with the blessings of my sister's doctors, took her to the ER, where she was admitted to the behavioral health unit. I sent an email to all of her friends so they would know what was going on, and I told them she couldn't have any phone calls and no visitors. Eventually, after my sister acclimated, the family was allowed to call on a restricted basis. 1 call a day, short conversation. And we were told what to say and what not to say. Her friend was frustrated and made it known. So I sort of scripted her about what a conversation should sound like, and I gave her my phone privilege. I thought that was a good thing, but it turned out that it wasn't, because the friends, after speaking with my sister, decided that she did not belong in a psych unit, and she was just incensed that my sister was there. Meanwhile, the nurses on the unit said that my sister was socially engaging with the other patients. And in fact, she was able to speak with people who they couldn't even talk to. She was that effective. And she was doing fine. She was compliant. She was adjusting to the meds. They were evaluating her closely. Her doctors saw her daily. And she did so well that, surprisingly, one day I got a phone call and I was told that my sister was going to be discharged in 2 days. I had done a lot of research a while back, but I figured I could keep her at home. And I said, I'm grateful that I got somebody to provide 24/7 care. I wanted to keep her in her house. And, well, that wasn't going to work, because the immediate response was, your sister can't stay home. She needs more than one person to care for her, and she has to be in a lockdown facility. That was shocking, especially since I had 2 days to find a place. So I started doing more work, calling places, and I learned that a lot of places had waiting lists. Some places wouldn't take people coming from a psych unit, even if they were just there for an evaluation. So I panicked and I thought, I've got to get help. And I approached the social worker at the hospital and told her the situation. And she said she'd be happy to help, and she would call places where many residents had gone after they left the unit. Luckily, she called one that was her preferred choice. They had an opening, and my sister would be allowed to go there in 2 days. So I was thrilled. And I immediately went to the facility, and I spent 4 hours talking to the admissions director, looked at the facility, thought it would be a good fit. And I was asked at that point if my sister had long-term care insurance, and she did. And they asked what company, and I told them. And they said, oh, a lot of residents have the same insurance company. Well, that was the good news. After my sister went to the facility and we contacted the insurance company, I was advised that my sister would not get full nursing home coverage because this facility didn't qualify for that. So I appealed the denial, and it took a long time, but eventually we won. And now my sister's getting full benefits. And there's a huge difference in the payout as well as the length of coverage, the length of time that she would be covered. So I wanted to let my sister's friends know what was going on. I decided not to tell anyone but my husband, not even my siblings, where my sister was going, because there were two reasons. One, I didn't know if the facility would keep her, and secondly, at that point, I didn't know if the insurance was going to cover her. So I wrote an email saying that she was in a facility that was a good facility, and it was more like a residence, not like a nursing home, and that was all I said. So no one but my husband knew where she was. But somehow, her best friend found out where my sister was. And she appeared at the door. It was January. It was one of the coldest days. She appeared, knocked at the door. My sister saw her through the window and, of course, was waving and got emotional. And one of the newly hired aides let her friend in. And shortly thereafter, a manager came by and said, you have to leave. We're on lockdown, and no resident can get a visitor because of COVID. So my sister's friend left reluctantly, and then shortly thereafter reported me to the state for incarcerating my sister against her will. I know, it was shocking. This was the hardest thing for me to believe, because I would never have expected this from my sister's friend, who, by the way, was my friend as well. We had taken vacations together, so this was truly shocking. Excuse me. I want to see what happened next. Boy, I've told a lot. After my sister's friend reported me and got nowhere, she engaged an attorney. Oh, I'm not speaking close enough to the mic, excuse me. My sister's friend engaged an attorney and contacted me about having a mediation. And essentially I refused because I said there's no reason. There's nothing I can do about the visitation rights. They apply to all the residents because of COVID. And in particular, my sister couldn't have phone calls because she was getting acclimated, just like when she was in the hospital. The family wasn't allowed to call her, and I explained that to the attorney. Not long after that, I got contacted again by this attorney, and this regarded the phone calls. I explained that I was updating, I should say, all of my sister's friends weekly based on what I heard from the facility about phone calls. The family was eventually allowed to make phone calls, but at this point, she was still being acclimated. The attorney then said to me, you know, my mother was in this exact facility. I know all the members in senior management. And I took that as an unsuccessful attempt to intimidate it and ignored it. But then when the restrictions were finally lifted for visitations and phone calls, I mentioned we had a large family. And so I thought it was more than fair to have the family members visit 4 days a week and the friends visit 3 days a week. They had to have an appointment, and the friends were not allowed to take my sister off-site. So we thought that was a wonderful setup. It didn't last long, and her friend was not happy with the visitation. She kept insisting that she be allowed to take my sister out. And at that point, we had a difficult time getting my sister back in when the family took her out, and there had to be 2 of us. And also, we didn't trust the friends to do the right thing. So then I was reported to the state again, and nothing came of these investigations, I should say that, but it took time to go through them. My sister's friends then started a private Facebook page. My family was blocked from it, and it was called Support, and it had my sister's name. And this was done in person, online, on Facebook, in emails and texts. My sister's entire grade school class was solicited, her entire high school class, friends, former students, colleagues, and even her fellow parishioners. And now the group is up to 250. After that, I've talked to Chien and Kayla about what to do. I was so distraught because I was hearing some of the things that were being said, and they weren't pretty. And I decided at that point to just do nothing in terms of legal matters. I wanted to let it go. But then when it came to the visits, they also caused a problem because her friend would visit, her friend would call, and after each call and visit, my sister would call me. She was distressed, she was provoked, and she was angry. And I learned that her friend was saying, we want to take you out to lunch, but Mary won't let us. Mary won't let us. So this is what my sister heard over and over. She also mentioned, we want to take you out to lunch. Again, my name was brought up, not the facilities, me. So as stressed as my sister was, she continued calling me, and she would say, did you talk to her friend? Did you talk to my friend? And she said, all I want is peace. I want this to stop. So I decided to let the facility know this was happening, only to find out that they also noticed that my sister was reacting that way, and they noticed it after the phone calls and the visits. And that's where it came up that my sister's friend should have supervised visits. we thought long and hard about this, and she agreed to have 4 supervised visits, but we also asked her to sign a contract saying that she would not talk to my sister negatively about me or about the facility. She agreed with the 4 supervised visits, but she refused to sign the contract. And it was brought to my attention that I could stop her from visiting because I was the power of attorney. I decided not to. Why? Because I thought that was penalizing my sister. This was her best friend, and I didn't want to deprive her of the privilege of seeing her. Is there anything that you want to interject about the...
Sure. Thank you, Mary. So we will come back to the story a little bit. Now, I'm actually gonna go back a little bit about when dementia first started, and when when the family members were trying to find assistance, find resources, find help for the sister. Now, in fact, our organization VOYCE, we actually have a helpline. And then for the audience online, please write down this number. The number is 314-919-2403. And I'm going to repeat, 314-919-2403. You need any assistance, long-term care related, that's the number you call. And in fact, right now, I am going to have our VOYCE Connect coordinator, Elizabeth, talk about her program here. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Chien. Hello, everyone. My name's Elizabeth. I am our operations coordinator here at VOYCE, and I also do our VOYCE Connect program. So thank you, Chien, for giving the number out. Like Chien was saying, you can call that number anytime that you have questions about things that could come up with aging or in the disability world. So our services serve several purposes. One of them could be, like in the case of Mary, getting you connected to other professionals like care managers or elder law attorneys in the area. But it can also really serve as a way to get you started in the planning process for long-term care for yourself or a loved one. And so I saw some people talking in the chat about looking for whether that be in-home services or looking into a community or a facility of some kind. That's when our services can be used to help you get pointed in the right direction. So as Chien said, you can call that line, and what I can do is go over whatever circumstances you are in for yourself or your loved one and see how we can help and what resources we can pull together to get you started on the right path. So it's a really great program for where our other programs like the Ombudsman program aren't able to help. VOYCE Connect can kind of come in and hopefully get something going for people. So if anyone has any questions about that program at the end, I'd be happy to answer what we can and can't do. And I also am able to talk to you directly at the number that Chien listed. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. And so remember that face. Remember Elizabeth's number, 314-919-2403. So now, when someone's aging, like say Mary's sister, when someone's aging, and when the person also got dementia or even other medical issues, clinical issues, you need a lot of help. You need a lot of resources in order to help. And Elizabeth, like we said, that is one great resource, actually great resources that Elizabeth can provide. However, there's another resource that Mary actually was referred to, and then eventually this great resource, the long-term care ombudsman program, is involved, and that is the lady here on my far right. That's Kayla. So Kayla is our ombudsman that oversees Central County and West County. And then Kayla actually worked closely with Mary. Kayla actually visited Mary's sister in the long-term care community multiple times. So let's have Kayla's let's hear about Kayla's perspective. Now, first thing first. So Kayla, I understand that there were friends of the resident of Mary's sister that actually came in to visit, and then they wanted to file complaints against the facility. They wanted to file complaints against the Mary. So what did you do back then? Did you just simply, take the complaint and then just go with it?
Actually, no. So the Ombudsman program is resident directed. So we need to have either the resident or the resident's representative, like Mary, her power of attorney. So the friend actually came in. It was actually an email that we received that the resident was being abused at the facility, and the power of attorney was abusing her privileges. So we invited the friend in, and we had an open discussion about what was occurring. And so we kind of told her, we need to talk to the resident, talk to the power of attorney, and we just basically referred her to the hotline, to Hotline Facility for any abuse allegations, as well as Adult Protective Services for any abuse that the power of attorney may be inflicting. And then it was not too long after where I was connected with Mary. And so I went and visited the resident and had detailed conversations with Mary about what she can do. Unfortunately, in these family dynamic issues, we can't really intervene too much. Like Mary mentioned, there was nothing founded on the hotline calls. They saw no problems, no issues. So going forward, we were just dealing with these family and friend dynamic issues. And really through that, it was more coaching Mary and, easing her anxiety about, about some of the happenings that were occurring. So, but the Ombudsman program is a really good resource for residents out in the community as well as their representatives, and I feel like this is a really good case to kind of showcase that.
So thank you, Kayla. So just if anyone that's online watching our conversation here, if you have any questions about the Ombudsman program, if you have any questions about where to find resources, how to get a hotline, how to get Ombudsman program involved, please you can call our main line. You can call Elizabeth, and our main line is 314-918-8222. That is our main line here. Now I'm gonna go back to so Mary as the power of attorney. So Mary actually did a few things, right? So Mary actually gave consent to Kayla so that Kayla can actually start the investigation and then start visiting the residents, start to get involved. So now there was one thing about we know that during COVID, the visits actually were not allowed, or the visits were actually restricted. But there was also one little part that Mary mentioned about when resident was first admitted to a facility or to a long-term care community, visitations were simply just not recommended. Was that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. Okay. Now, Mary, would you like to talk a little bit about why and how that happened? And I will actually add a little bit of the clinical information about that.
Well, why it happened, as I said, for visitation, it was because of COVID. And as far as my sister, it was recommended that she just be there and away from familiar people like her family and friends so that she could adjust. And that's what happened when she was in the hospital, and it worked well. I understood that. So it was basically just to let her get acclimated. And in a new setting where you're with people that you don't know, that takes a few days. And keep in mind, with cognitive impairment, she was confused anyway, and I think that was hard. The good news is, in her case anyway, I like the fact that this was more of a residence, and it made it easier for her, I think, to adjust. It wasn't a big nursing home. So it was really what everybody does when they enter a facility like this.
Yes. So, clinically speaking, well, when the sister first moved into this community, of course, you know, she knew no one there. So it's scary, and then I don't know any people here. I'm in a unfamiliar environment. So I'm gonna be intimidated. I'm gonna be scared, and then I don't know where I am. I don't know what to do here. I don't know why I'm here. So sure, that's understandable. The problem here is though that the family, should the friends simply just intervene, come to visit every day since the admission? And the answer is no, they shouldn't. And why they shouldn't? Because even though when family members, when friends, when they show up, and that's a familiar face for the resident, what is resident's response or reaction gonna be? The reaction is gonna be, well, help me. They lock me up here. I am in prison, and then take me home, right? So while families' visits are should be positive, now the effect, the impact here, especially the first few weeks, they are actually negative. So that's clinically not recommended. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, later on, Mary talked about there are 7 days a week. So family that Mary has a huge family here. So families, they get to have 4 days to visit the sister, and then all the friends, all the students, and they get to have 3 days to visit. To me, that sounds fair. Now, does power of attorney, do they have such an authority? And the answer is yes, they do. Okay, because this is actually for residents' benefit, for residents' interest, for residents' well-being, and as a proper power of attorney who is actually advocating for the resident. Yes, Mary has to do that. And she does have the right to do that. Therefore, like Kayla said earlier, yes, friends, they can complain all they want. The problem, though, is that the power of attorney, the legal representative, they do have the right to actually advocate for the best interest of this resident. Now, talking about power of attorney, I'm actually going to talk about some really, really important paperwork here. So if for you that's watching online, if you don't have these paperwork that I'm gonna mention, you probably want to kind of jot it down, and then give us a call, and then we can talk more about these paperwork. Okay, so I'm gonna give first a scary number here. 75% of Americans do not have an advance directive, such as a living will, such as a power of attorney. Okay, 75%. So for those 25% that you actually have your power of attorney set up, you actually have your living will handy, great. Then you did the right thing. Okay. Now, Mary is the sister's power of attorney, and then all of us, Kayla is very young, and then Mary Mary is a few years older than Kayla. But
It's a lie, I said.
no, it's not. But regardless, Kayla and Mary, as well as myself, we all should have power of attorney. Okay, have that power of attorney set up so that when you cannot speak for yourself, when you can no longer advocate for yourself, there's someone like Mary to advocate for you. Okay, so power of attorney set up. Now, other than power of attorney, we need to have healthcare directives. So what is healthcare directives? So go to Missouri Bar Association, and there are a lot of forms there that you can utilize, which include healthcare directives. So well, what is healthcare directives? I thought if I have Mary as my power of attorney, then Mary can simply make decisions for me, while I cannot make decisions for myself, right? Sure, that's one way to do it. However, there are 9 questions on this healthcare directives. So, for example, when I'm in a coma, when I can no longer speak for myself, and then the doctor finds cancer in my body, do I want to have chemo? Well, I cannot speak for myself, but then Mary is gonna have to. Mary is my POA, power of attorney, and then Mary is gonna make that decision for me. Well, then Mary is gonna go, well, yeah, I know Chien, but I'm not sure. You know, the cancer is on the second stage cancer, so I'm not sure if he wants to go through this, right? Or I'm in a coma, and then my kidneys are failing, right? And then do I want get dialysis? Then I cannot speak for myself. Mary is gonna speak for me, right? Sure.
I just wanted to ask a question. Is there a difference in being a POA versus a medical power of attorney?
Very good question. So, power of attorney, a lot of times what we see is a general power of attorney. For a general POA, or that's some people call them a DPOA, durable power of attorney, right? So that basically you can make decisions just in general, no matter that is medical, no matter that's legal, that's financial, you can do all of those. Unless, well, I specify that my financial POA will go to Kayla, and my medical POA will go to Mary. Okay? And then so hopefully, because I'm in a coma, hopefully Kayla and Mary they will talk between themselves, right? But you know, the bottom line is that if that's not a general POA, then Kayla will be designated by me, of course, when I can still speak for myself. Kayla will is designated to deal with my financial, versus then Mary will be dealing with my medical. Yes. So talking about medical. So then well, my kidneys are not working anymore, and then now the doctor is wondering, well, do I want to do dialysis? And then Mary is gonna go, well, I'm not so sure, right? That's why we need to have healthcare directives. When you have healthcare directives, there are 9 very difficult questions, and then if you fill out that form, you're gonna actually answer those questions. The questions like, well, when your kidneys are no longer working, do you want dialysis? When doctor finds cancers in your body, do you want radiation? Do you want chemotherapy? That kind of thing. Therefore, while Mary is in charge of my my medical care when I cannot speak for myself, then Mary can actually look at my medical directives and then go, well, yes, according to this medical directives, this is a map, and then Chien does want dialysis, but he doesn't want radiation or chemo. So it will work like that. Okay. Then next thing, DNR. Do not resuscitate. DNR, you need to have that. Well, that is if you choose to do DNR, right? Then in Missouri, in the meantime, make sure that you want to, if you want to have DNR, you want to also consider, do you want to have DNI? Do not intubate. Those are two different things. Okay, so you want to think about, do you want to get intubated or not? And then if you don't, then you need to have DNI. And as well as if you don't want to have DNR, if you don't want to be resuscitated, then you need to have a DNR. Now, talking about DNR, there's another thing, and that is called OHDNR. And it is out of hospital, do not resuscitate form. Okay, so out of hospital, do not resuscitate form, it is purple. It has to be printed on a piece of purple paper. And then, so because in Missouri, legally, when you are in an ambulance, the EMT staff, EMT people, they are required to resuscitate you. Even though you have a DNR, that DNR actually works at home, works in the hospital, works in the nursing home. It does not work when you are in an ambulance. So you do, if you prefer DNR, if you choose do not resuscitate, you also need to have this DNR, this purple OHDNR out of hospital DNR form filled out, and then it has to be signed by your doctor so that they won't resuscitate you when you are on an ambulance. Okay. So lastly, you need to have a living will. And living will, that is to prevent any issues after the death, right? So since we are talking about living will, I'm going to go back to power of attorney. So power of attorney and living will, these two documents, the time period they cover, it doesn't overlap. They do not overlap. So power of attorney, that is for someone who is still alive but cannot make decisions for themselves. Then the POA, such as Mary will make decisions for me, Chien, who is still alive, but I just cannot speak for myself. Okay? But then one day when Chien actually dies, then this power of attorney, it no longer has the effectiveness. And then the moment Chien dies, power of attorney ends, and the living will start. That is how it works. And what is a living will? Well, I bequeath my car to Kayla. I bequeath my house to Jamie. I give whatever to whoever, and then who is gonna take care of my body, and how I want my body to be processed, cremation or whatnot, right? That is specified in living will. So very important documents, all of these, and then they are power of attorney, they are healthcare directives, they are DNR, DNI, they are OHDNR, and as well as living will. So you need to have all of these very important, very crucial documents. Okay, so now let's come back to the power of attorney. So as we said, as we established earlier, Mary does have the right to actually put a parameter, restrictions on how that visit can happen and how often or even where it can happen or it cannot happen. Okay, so that is why Kayla actually gave the guidance. Kayla actually provided advice to Mary about this entire visitation restrictions. That is, of course, after COVID. Okay, so now let's have Mary continue on.
Okay, thank you. I mentioned I had jotted down some things that I wanted to share, and one of the things I forgot was my sister's best friend also filed charges, not just against the facility and me, but against my sister's doctor. And she was very cooperative and understood, but for one investigation, it was over 50 pages of paper she had to gather and submit to the state. And so, speaking of the state, I was having a difficult time with all of this emotional turmoil, all of these charges being made, and I was losing my confidence, and I didn't have anybody to turn to. So I thought, well, if my sister's best friend has all these resources, there must be something for me. I called the state, and I spoke to 5 different departments, and I was told because my sister's best friend was not a blood relative, she wasn't a power of attorney, they couldn't do anything. That wasn't their bailiwick. However, they said I should contact VOYCE, and that's when things got better. Thank you. VOYCE has been a godsend, and I have learned so many things and been educated about conservatorship, guardianship, HIPAA laws, privacy laws. How do I get an elder care attorney? I mean, there were so many things that I learned, and every time I talked to them on the phone, I felt like I owed them a copay because they were so helpful, and it was just amazing. And I actually got back to my old self. My husband had had enough. I mean, I was consumed with this, totally consumed, and now he's seen what a difference they have made, and he wants him to come at Thanksgiving. So I'm just letting you know. But I really just want to say this organization gave me hope. That's it in a nutshell. And I have told them, and I'm going to say it again, that never underestimate the difference that you make, because it's been extremely important to me, and I am most appreciative. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your kind words, Mary. And then I have to say, Kayla actually did most of it.
Now you tell me.
Yes, Kayla did most of it. So I'm very fortunate to have Kayla on my team. Okay, so lastly, resident rights. I'm gonna tie it all up with this one little thing, resident right. So residents in long-term care, they do have their rights, and until the resident is told that, well, you are incapacitated, therefore you need to have approval, or you need to have your support from your POA, power of attorney, from your legal guardian in order to get the decision made. Until then, residents, you have every right. So please reach out to the Ombudsman program. Please reach out to VOYCE Connect, and then also feel free to reach out to the state hotline, the abuse and neglect exploitation hotline, and these are all resources that we can provide here. And so I think we are 10 minutes before 1, and the 10 minutes that we have left, we will take some questions.
First one we've got is, where did you find the at-home people to agree to come to your sister's home?
I'm sorry.
Where did you find the at-home people to agree to come to your sister's home?
Okay.
Where did I find the people? I had called a social worker at another hospital and asked if she had any referrals. I also got lists from other people who had the same need as me. And I'm pretty good at researching, and I had found somebody for my mother and my sister, and I went to those same organizations. I also, my family's Catholic, and everyone in my family is very much interested in religious. We have relatives who are priests, and so I decided to go to convents and call the province and say, do you have any sister who does this kind of work? And that's how I found out about this nun that tried to help Teresa. So it was really just by referral and trying new places, because if one didn't work, I would just go back and research other areas. Word of mouth was helpful, but the one thing I'll say, most agencies could not assure me that the same person would come to my sister's house every day. And that was a problem for me. I wanted her to have familiarity with the care provider, and I wanted the same person there all the time, every week. I didn't want her meeting somebody new. It would be too difficult for her. So I was picky, and I was lucky, but she wouldn't let them in, so that didn't help me that much. And it worked out in the end, and she's in a good place, and she's compliant, and I think she's content and is engaging with people, and that's the main thing.
Then that was from Brenda, and then this question is from Michelle. How did Mary get the doctor to speak with her? Did the sister give verbal or written permission to share the information with family?
My sister's doctor, firstly, I should have said earlier that my sister, I told you she had wonderful relationships with her former students. Several of her doctors are her former students. This one was as well. But that didn't affect anything really, because legally she had to do what was required. And because I am the medical power of attorney, she was able to share things with me. And for the longest time, my sister would not let me go into the room when she was being examined. I stayed out in the waiting room, and she was very private, as I said. And as she got worse, that lessened, and she finally let me come into the room with her. But it was because I was the medical power of attorney. And I assume if I didn't have that, maybe just the power of attorney would have sufficed. I don't know.
Yes, and also if you were not, if Mary, you were not the power of attorney, then we do need to actually have your sister's verbal or written consent in order for you to be let's say if Kayla wanted to see your sister's medical info for whatever reason, right? And then your sister will have to give a verbal or written consent for Kayla to actually look at any information about her, right? Yeah.
Excuse me, I forgot that every doctor, I think, asks you to fill out a form about who they can share information with. So I was on that form as well. I should have prefaced it with that, because that would have taken care of it.
Okay, this question is for Chien. Should the power of attorney also be the executor of the will or estate?
That's actually based on the residents' their wishes. So if they want the power of attorney, which actually is not the right term, let me correct that. So for say Mary is on the sister's power of attorney paperwork, but we don't actually call Mary power of attorney, because power of attorney, it is actually papers, it's paperwork. So Mary is actually this is called agent. So Mary actually is the agent that is on the power of attorney paperwork for her sister. So Mary is actually the agent. So the agent on the power of attorney paperwork doesn't have to be the one that is execute the living will. No, it doesn't have to be. It's just based on the residents. In this case, that would be Mary's sister's wishes, whatever she's preferred. Yes.
And the next one is, what if there is no long-term insurance? Can you help find a place for that person? So typically, memory care facilities are private pay. So you can pay that through long-term care insurance. It definitely helps. You can also pay with your SSI, pension, any income that you have. Once you exhaust those resources, and you are on Medicaid, that those individuals typically go into a nursing home setting where Medicaid is accepted. Do you have anything to add, Chien? No? Okay. Yeah. And I think that's all the questions that we have.
Okay, great. And then once again, thank you, Mary, for joining us today. I understand that this is not easy to actually share the story, because especially when you actually were hurt in this entire journey, right?
Yes, and I just want to say I already thanked you profusely, but I will say this: the takeaway for me is I know that this isn't going to stop. Investigations will continue because a charge was recently placed again. But the difference is that now I'm able to handle them better. And of course, that's because of your expertise. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mary. And then, of course, that Kayla did most of it. So, the dilemma of aging and long-term care. This topic, we probably will, the discussion will never end. So please call us, please reach out to us, please connect with the Ombudsman program, please connect with VOYCE, and then any resources that you need, any consultation, any guidance that we could provide, we would be more than happy to do so. So thank you everyone online that is watching, and then I'm gonna give this back to Jamie.
I'm grateful to all our attendees for joining us this afternoon. Thank you for your time, thank you for your questions and for your engagement. Coming up, our next community education series webinar is Tuesday, September 13th. Your vote may not count. Join us to find out how to get your ID. Denise Lieberman, Director and General Counsel from the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, will be our guest, and she'll be discussing how seniors can attain their photo ID. Of course, this is such an issue, an ever-growing issue, seniors not having photo ID, being unable to vote, and being unable to access many important services. So we're very grateful to Denise Lieberman. She is an expert on voting rights, and we look forward to that.